Welcome to the Legal Advice in Paradise podcast, brought to you by www.legaladviceinparadise.com. Even in one of the most beautiful places in the world, life can be litigious. On this podcast, the best and brightest legal minds gather to help you navigate your way through every legal question you may face. This program will help you know your rights, know what steps to take, and help you find the best legal representation, all in simple, easy to understand terms. And now, here's your host, Justine Gronwald.
Aloha everyone. Before we dig into part one of a two-part series with DUI attorney Paul CUNNEY, I wanted to invite you to our free Agent of Change membership, and it's simple to join. Just call or text your name and your email to area code 808-670-3400 and make sure that you text agree to get more messages from us. And when you join, you will automatically get tips on how to look for an attorney, which is really important. So it's free to join, and it's area code 808-670-3400. Text or call your name and email. Now let's get right into part one of a two-part series with DUI attorney Paul CUNNEY. Hello and aloha again, Agents of Change. This is Justine with Legal Advice in Paradise, and today's episode we'll be covering DUI. And I have Hawaii's top DUI attorney, Mr. Paul CUNNEY. Paul, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, your experience, and also your law firm?
Okay. Well, first of all, I started out practicing law in Massachusetts. You probably can tell by my accent. I actually passed the bar in 1973, and I practiced in Massachusetts and Florida from 73 till about 1982, and that's when I took the bar exam here. I passed it, and then I moved here in 84. Mm-hmm. And when I first started in Boston, my first job was a prosecutor's office, and I used to prosecute what they call 6-person jury, not 12-people jury, 6-person. They were quicker. And in the DUI, it was a misdemeanor. It wasn't like a felony where you needed 12 people to sit in deliberation. Mm-hmm. Cases would move faster, and so I got a lot of experience prosecuting the DUIs. And then when I came here and realized that at that time, in the late 80s, they were arresting almost 8,500 people a year statewide for DUI.
Back in the 80s, 8,500?
Yeah, it peaked in about 1988. 8,800 people were arrested in the late 80s. And
that's like 10% of the population, isn't it?
No. It's at that
Not
time.
10%.
No, at that time the population was probably closer to 500,000.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm thinking about today. Yeah, it's like 800 something.
Yeah, no. It's
people.
probably like 1% of the population.
Yeah, 1%.
But currently, they arrest about 7,300 people a year in the state of Hawaii. They did it last year. They did it the year before, and the year before that, of which about 5,000 are on Oahu, which translates into about 100 a week.
That's a lot going in.
Yeah, it's quite a bit. But the people are just, caught up with all the advertising, the fun times when you go out and drink Coronas or Heinekens or the Silver Bullet, and people go to a bar and it's difficult to stop at 2 drinks, 3 drinks. People have that 4th drink, the 5th, the 6th, and at that point it's too late. You can't get in the car and drive it and really drive home safely at that point.
Right. Yeah. And unfortunately, it's easy to get carried away.
Yeah, and people don't really intend to do it, but when they go out to drink, they have a couple, and then someone will say, oh, buy him a beer, and then you buy him one, and then there's someone else. So before you know it, people are buying beers back and forth. It's kind of a social thing, and, once you get to that 3rd drink, I think that you're somewhat impaired as to what you can do and what you can't do, and then you make bad decisions.
Exactly, and I want you to cover that. And also, when people start innocently with beers, then comes the shots.
Oh, yeah, that's
The
even
shots.
worse. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and then, it's just a whole bunch of fun.
Yeah, well, the definition of driving under the influence says that a person's consumed alcohol sufficient to impair his normal mental faculties, comma, ability to care for themselves and guard against casualty. So the mental impairment is probably thinking that you can drive home even though you're still going to have to go 5 miles and you're going to have to, go on the highway, and that's poor judgment at that point. Mental impairment can be, slurred speech, or if the officer comes up and asks for documents and you give him your credit card instead of your driver's license.
Yeah.
Ability to care for oneself, that's the field sobriety test, when they ask you to get out of the car and to stand on one leg and count 1,000, 2 1,000, up to 31,000. Or if they want you to walk a line, an imaginary line or a line on the pavement, 9 steps down, 9 steps back, keep your hands to your side, make contact heel to toe, look at your feet. And those are tough tests. Some people, can't pass those even if they've not even had a drip of alcohol.
Wow.
Yeah, it's really not an objective test. It's more very subjective because it's the police officer who's watching it and grading it. And if he's already smelt alcohol to get you out of the car, in all likelihood, he's probably going to err on the side of caution and arrest you unless you can pass that field sobriety test with flying colors.
Right, and you hear that behind the siren. It's like perfect timing for an interview. You hear the siren?
I doubt it's a DUI at this time of day, but you never know.
This is middle of the day downtown, people. We are now at 2:09.
Yeah.
People should not be drinking.
Yeah, well, I think that's a big assumption.
Yeah, that was great, background
That's
noise.
right.
But anyway, getting back to that, the whole purpose today like with all my interviews with attorneys, is that we take their area of practice and then we hone in. If someone finds themselves in your chair, like we're at your desk right now, this is where you would be sitting. What would you want from them, or what's the information? I took this from your website, and it says here, some questions you may need answered are, and here it says, if the arresting officer took my license, what can I do to get it back?
Okay. The whole area of DUI law in Hawaii changed in 1991. Up to that time, if you got arrested before 1991, you would keep your driver's license and you'd get a court date. And it was just the criminal side. And in fact, back in 85 all the way through to 94, you were allowed to could have a jury trial. You could have 12 people decide your fate. Jury trials were granted under case versus State versus O'Brien in 1985, and at that point there was a run on the courthouse for trial dates for a jury trial. But then the tough administrative judge at that time, Wan Bei Chang, kind of told people, in a memo that, hey, if your client's found guilty, I'm going to treat him seriously because the Supreme Court says DUI is a serious offense. So one by one, people kind of decided to make a deal and took a plea bargain. But I did take the first jury trial, and it went on for 7 days.
Wow.
It was a fireman was arrested by a motorcycle police off of Pauahi and Smith Street, and my client was parked legally, and he pulled out, and when he pulled out, he didn't see the officer come around the corner on the motorcycle, and the officer had a jam on its brakes, and the officer said, what's this guy doing? So he checked him out, and he felt he was under the influence, and we had a trial, and it went on for, like I say, 7 days, and I brought in an expert on the breathalyzer machine. It was on TV every night. It kind of put me on the map out here. And after 3 days of deliberation, the jury found my client guilty, but the case was overturned by the Hawaii Supreme Court because the judge didn't instruct the jury correctly on the intoxilyzer machine. In those days, it was called the breathalyzer. Now it's called the intoxilyzer.
Oh.
So we lost the battle but won the war. And we were allowed to have jury trials from 85 up to about 94. And in 1991, there were so many people driving around with a DUI with their licenses still in their pocket. The battle cry from Mad Mothers and some people was, let's get the drunks off the road. And so they created this law of the Administrative Driver's License Revocation Office, where the officer now, when he arrests you, will actually physically take your license.
Right.
If your license is valid, he'll give you a temporary permit to drive for 30 days, and within that 30 days, you're entitled to have a hearing to determine if the officer had probable cause to stop you, probable cause to arrest, was the machine working properly, is there a valid breath test result or a blood result in this case. So that's the origin of how people lost their licenses on the spot.
Wow.
And got a piece of paper saying they could drive for 30 days. That was the due process, to allow you to drive for 30 days and you could have a hearing. And at first, the numbers, I don't know what it was, so whether the police officers now at that point in 1991 became judge, jury, and executioner. Before that, they would arrest somebody and there would be the judge, or in those cases, a jury could decide whether he was guilty or innocent. But the police just didn't like, there was a lot of extra paperwork involved, and I think they felt it was really up to the court or a judge or a prosecutor to decide whether the case should even be prosecuted, whether the judge would find him guilty or a jury. And I don't think they liked the responsibility. So as a result, the number of arrests dropped dramatically from about 8,000 down to about 3,500.
Wow, that is drastic.
It is quite a drop.
In a short period of time.
Right, and then it just gradually, it started to come back up, and they kind of simplified the paperwork, and now there's, like I say, there's about 7,300 a year, which is still considerable.
Yeah, for an island.
Yeah, so the DUI, when you get arrested now, basically, I describe it to my clients as like driving down the road and you run to a fork in the road and the road splits. The DUI, the one DUI splits into a civil hearing, which is held down by the Humane Society. There's a little 2-story building down there by the Humane Society, Moiliili, and that's where all the driver's licenses are sent to, and that's where you have your hearing within 25 days. And then you have the criminal side. So they're coming at you two ways.
Wow.
There's an administrative revocation, and that's all they do at that revocation office. They either give you the license back if you can prove it wasn't a good stop or a good arrest, versus the judge, who has possibilities of giving you a fine, community service, jail. All three of them, 2 out of the 3 or 1 out of the 3.
Wow.
So the judge is more of a punitive thing, whereas losing the license for a year at the revocation office is more remedial. So they don't have the power. But actually, if a person doesn't take a breath test, the revocation office down at South King Street will take the license for 2 years, whereas the judge will only take it for a year. So it behooves a person to drink, but a lot of people, feel if I don't blow in the machine, if I don't walk the line or stand on one leg, they've got no evidence against me. So, and at that point, you can't consult with an attorney. It's a judgment call by the person who's under arrest, and the blue lights are flashing, and police officers are all around. What am I going to do? Am I going to take the test or not? So a lot of people, most of the people, I would say probably 85% take a breath test, and then about 15 decide to refuse.
Wow.
But if they refuse, the consequences can double as far as the license revocation.
Right. Wow. This I did not know.
Yeah.
Isn't that a good thing?
Well, it is a good thing you don't know.
I haven't done that. And then here's another thing. Am I still able to contest the stop and arrest by police?
Yes, you can, because that's the authority that revocation office has. Before they can uphold a revocation of the license, they have to look to see if there was probable cause to stop. In other words, did the officer have a good reason to pull the person over?
Like if they were swerving?
If they were swerving, if they were running red lights, if they were going 80 miles an hour in a 15-mile zone, if they got caught on a laser gun. A lot of these people, they drive when they shouldn't, and they'll swipe a parked car. And that's strong evidence that a person's under the influence, because it's the third element of under the influence is to guard against casualty. So if you get in an accident, it's pretty good proof for the prosecutor that you had something to drink and that you were probably impaired by what you did consume. So yeah, you can fight. You can fight. They've got to show that it was a probable cause. The stop was good, and the arrest was good. I've got a case right now that I just thought about. I was driving the car. I've got a case in Maui where no, actually it's on the Big Island. It's a professional person, athlete, and he stopped at a roadblock. And so when you get a roadblock stop, there's really no bad driving, unless you drive through the cones or don't stop when they tell you. So usually you approach a roadblock, you see it ahead, you slow
Right.
down, you pull up.
Right.
It isn't like the weaving or running red lights or stop signs and stuff like that. So the person pulls up, the officer says, I smell alcohol, and gets you out of the car. Now, the fellow that I have in Kona, they gave him the eye test, and I don't think the judges put too much stock in the eye test because, you know, the stimulus might not be held the right distance from a person's nose. You know, the officer's looking to see what they call involuntary jerking of the eye. But you can have that from if you're a welder. Or if you're a chemist and you're looking through a microscope, then you might have just a involuntary twitch in your eye. Or if you drink too much caffeine, or if you have some nervous disorder. There's a number of reasons why you can have a little twitch, a jerking of your eye, and it's not related to alcohol. So they don't put a lot of stock in the horizontal gaze nystagmus test. And the next test is to walk the line, 9 steps down, 9 steps back, keep your hands to your side, pivot to the left, and make contact between heel and toe. And then the last one is to stand on one leg and hold it up, and you count. It's the divided tension test where you count. You count 1 1,000, 2 1,000, 3 1,000, all the way up to 31,000. So my guy in Kona, number one, no bad driving because it's a roadblock. Number two, he's able to hold the foot up for 12. He puts it down, he picks it back up, and he holds it up to 30. And then the next test, to walk the line, the officer said, well, you know, we normally do it right there in the parking lot where Starbucks is, but we were a little bit mocha of that. It looks like they were maybe 10 yards or 15 yards mocha. So they didn't walk him down 10 yards into the parking lot. They didn't do the test at all. So there's no walk-in turn test on this guy. And then on the back of the form that they use for the field sobriety test, it talks about optional tests. And it says if for some reason either the walk-in turn test or the one-leg stand is not given, for whatever reason is not given, then you're supposed to give what they call a finger-to-nose test, or what they call the modified Romberg, where you lean back, close your eyes, and you hold that position for 15 seconds. And neither one of those tests were given. So on the test that he put his foot down one time, that's one clue. So he passed that test. You need 2 clues to fail. And they didn't give him the walk-and turn test because they didn't walk him to Starbucks 10 yards away. And they didn't give the optional test. So there's 5 tests they could have given to him. They gave 2. He passed the one of the 2. So where's the basis to arrest this guy? Yeah, so I think this is a real strong case for the judge to consider throwing this case out. It's already been thrown out at the administrative side. But now I've got to go before a judge over in Kona and convince him that, you know, not every arrest is a good arrest. I would say probably 92% of the arrests are good, but there's that 8% that, and I tell the judges, I'm not in here fighting for my losers. My losers, I plead my losers out and try to get a good plea agreement for my clients, because if it's not a good case, then just, you know, you might as well close up shop and reduce the damage, you know. In other words, minimize your exposure and your loss by pleading and taking responsibility.
Yeah, that's good. And let me see. It says here, what will happen to me for driving without a license or auto insurance if I lose and don't fight my case? Will I go to jail if I get caught driving?
Well, here's what happens.
Maybe I'm wrong, but I hear there's a lot of people out there without auto insurance driving around and drinking all at the same time.
Well, I was on the governor's task force back in about 1995. They had just taken away the jury trial because they said the first-time offender could be rehabilitated, and therefore it wasn't really serious. Okay, he could learn. So my argument to the governor's task force was, well, why do we have this onerous insurance? The SR-22 for first-time offenders, which meant if you got stopped and you were found guilty of DUI, you personally had to call Allstate or State Farm or Liberty Mutual, Geico, whatever, and tell them you had a DUI. And the lady would say, "Are you sitting down?" "Yeah, I am." "Yeah, okay. Well, it's going to cost you $5,000 a year for 3 years, $15,000, and if you don't pay it, you're not going to get your license back."
Wow.
So based upon that, people said, "Hey, I can't afford that."
Yeah.
So they just took the risk. So they went and drove, and they didn't have insurance, and they didn't have a license. So we corrected that in '95, and we also reduced the alcohol level at that time from .10 down to .08. So part of that negotiation with the legislature was to get rid of the SR-22 for first-time offender. So today we don't have an SR-22. SR-22 means you have to provide proof of financial responsibility. So besides insuring the car, now they want you to have insurance on you because you're a risk on the road. And that's so today an SR-22 might cost you $1,500, maybe even a little bit less on top of your car insurance.
Yeah, that's still...
Well, it is. But can you imagine when...
5,000.
Oh yeah, no, and the insurance companies, it was all gravy for them, you know. I mean, in fact, if you drove a nice Corvette, I had people come in and told me it was going to be $9,000 a year for 3 years. Oh yeah. So finally, as a result of that, and then part of my argument to the legislature was, we got 25,000 people in this state right now in 1995 that are driving around with no insurance and no driver's license. And driver's license is one thing, but to have no insurance, that's really a public safety issue.
Right.
Whereas, I mean, if someone collides into your car, you hope that they've got insurance.
Yeah.
Either that, or as personal injury lawyers always argue, go out and get that underinsured motorist coverage. So if the guy hits you, doesn't have enough insurance, at least your insurance company will take care of it.
Right.
Yeah. So that's another thing. But
and as far
so
as
on,
this
so
part,
on,
yeah,
so on this part here,
will I go to jail?
Oh, you are. Yeah. If you have your license revoked at either the revocation office down by South King Street, that's the administrative side of the DUI, or by the judge, if you lose your license for 1 year, and you don't put that ignition interlock in your car, and we'll get to the ignition interlock.
Okay.
If you don't put that in your car and you get caught driving, 4 things happen, and they're all bad. Number 1, you go to jail. Minimum 3 days up to a year.
I was going to say, how long do you stay in there?
Minimum 3 days up to a year, okay? Number 2, you will have an SR-22. Number 3, you will lose your license to drive for another year. So instead of losing it for a year, you lose it for 2 years.
Wow.
And the 4th thing is, now you come to me and say, you know what, you talked about that ignition interlock that I could put in my car and drive for... Too late. It's too late to put it in. Yeah. So if you get a DUI and it's a bad DUI and you think you need to drive, how many people could really go a year without driving? It's very difficult.
Yeah.
Unless you live right across the street from your place of employment.
Right. Right.
So a lot of people chance it. I had a guy in court today. He got arrested in October, and he got caught driving in February. Now he wants to come in, and I hope he's telling me the truth. He's going to say that in the car when he was driving in February was his ailing mother and his girlfriend. I said, well, why didn't the girlfriend drive? She had a license. Well, she had stomach pains. She was pregnant,
Oh.
And the mother had to go to the hospital.
And he was the only one.
So he's saying that he's taking his mother to the... Now, there is something in the law. If this man is telling me the truth, and I hope he is, there's a thing in the law called choice of evils defense. So in other words, you can commit an offense if the offense is going to prohibit a greater evil from happening, okay? So here, in this case here, he's committing the offense of driving without a license because his license was suspended for a DUI.
He's like an ambulance.
But the greater risk would be the mother would have severe complications in the car and would not be able to get to the hospital.
Right.
I suppose the judge could say, well, why didn't he call the ambulance? But then again, it might take the ambulance. You don't know where they live. It might take 15 to 20 minutes for the ambulance to get there.
Right.
I suppose the same thing would hold true if if your wife was delivering a baby, you know, and you're home. Oh, I don't have a license. I can't take you, honey. Take me. What are you talking about, Daddy? You know, like that. So
is that evil?
Yeah. Well, the choice of evil was that she'd have complications.
Oh,
and
yeah.
She could die. The baby could die. You
Mm-hmm,
know, that's a possibility. And so,
Wow.
so that it's very, very rarely used. I think in 40 years of practice in law, I probably have raised it 3 or 4 times. Yeah.
So it's really rare.
It's a rare,
So
rare defense.
watch the stories that you tell.
Yeah. I have. In fact, I have a not related to DUI, but I have a fellow that was at a party, and I think he got people upset with him, and he left, and these guys decided to chase him down the road.
Oh.
And when they were chasing him down the road, they kind of saw him running up into this bush, and one of them got out, and the guy had a baseball bat, you know, and they're coming at, and we're gonna get you, we're gonna beat you up or something.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So what's he do? He runs across the street, and he sees a light on at 4 o'clock in the morning. He starts banging on the lady's door. And the lady's looking, what's going on? And I'm like, let me in, let me in,
she's
let
like,
me
no
in.
way.
Call the police like that. And she's going, no. And so he breaks the glass.
Oh, no.
He breaks the glass. She's calling the police.
Oh my goodness.
And so I guess the broken glass and her calling the police and all the commotion,
right.
the 4 guys took off.
Oh God.
So he's trying to use that as a choice of evil's defense, that he had no intended to go in that, step on
But
that
he
lady's
had-
property to burglarize
He
her.
felt he had no choice,
He
or
thought- yeah.
he'd get beaten.
He was going to get beaten, yeah.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
we've talked about that case as a possible choice of evil. So
Okay.
it comes up once in a while, but not very often. So
That's
don't rely on
interesting,
it.
though.
Don't rely
Yeah,
on it.
You hear that? Don't rely on it. Okay, and here we're gonna talk about this now. What is ignition interlock, and how does it work? I've never heard of it before.
Yeah. Well, I told you in 1991 the law changed where there was just not going to be an arrest by a police officer, and the fellow or the woman was going to keep her license until the case was adjudicated. So one of the problems was, once I won the first jury trial back in 1985, everybody started to demand jury trial. So when it came to about 1991, there were 3,000 people waiting for jury trial for DUI, and there was only one courtroom.
Oh my!
So, and I'll never forget this.
That is
And we
crazy.
used to do them right over here in the downtown post office. There was a courtroom up there, which there used to be the Intermediate Court of
Is
Appeals.
that Richard Street?
This is Richard Street, right out here. We're looking down on it here. Okay,
It's a beautiful view.
it's
by
a
the way.
it's a beautiful. It was the most gorgeous courtroom I think I ever practiced law in, because you had like 20-foot ceilings. The sun would be setting, you know, in the afternoon. It would come through these windows. It had big drapes. They actually filmed some movies in there. It was really a classic. Courtroom, and eventually now it's been cut up into all kinds of pieces, being used, I think, by Department of DCCA, you know.
Oh, yeah.
Consumer Affairs.
Consumer Affairs.
Yeah. And so we used to go in there, and I would probably have like 20 cases every Monday on the calendar, and I would go in, and I'd have maybe 3 or 4 of them. And I would always go to trial with one of my cases. So when I went to trial, we'd start trial on Tuesday, pick a jury. Trial would go Wednesday, Thursday, and that would be it. We'd about to get one case done. So the other 18 or 19 cases on the calendar would go back into the hopper.
Oh my!
So that's how the backlog got created.
That must have been just crazy.
So yes, and I remember standing there with Judge Hiroshi Oshiro, and he said to my client, he says, "I'm Mr. So-and-so." He said, "We're kind of backed up. We're not going to get to your case today. We want you to come back in 1997 for your trial." And the guy said, "Judge, that's 6 years." He says, "I told you, we're backed up." So
wow, not joking, right?
No, he was serious. And cases were getting set in 1997. And that's when the Mad Mothers, you can ask them about the Mad Mothers and the legislature said, let's get the drunks off the road. So that's when they changed the law. That was 91. But now in 2011, they decided to change the revocation period for the license. The license used to be, first offense, you would lose your license for 90 days, of which the first 30 was absolute no driving. Then for the next 60 days, you'd have a work permit to go to and from work. And then after the 90 days, you could get your license back. In 2011, they said, nope, instead of losing your license for 90 days, you're going to lose it for a year. It's going to be 12 months.
Yeah, I have the sheet here.
Right.
We're going to go over that
Right.
in a little bit. Yeah.
For 12 months, you'd lose your license for 12 months. And if you cannot drive, you can't get that work permit, you know, like it was. The only way if you lose your license for 1 year, there's only 2 ways that you can drive. One is to install this ignition interlock device in your car. And about 30 states, 35 states in the country have it. It's a little handheld device, and you blow into it.
No, before you go further, where
Yeah.
do you get this?
Well, there's a company called Smart Start.
Smart Start.
They
Okay.
came in, they're located from the mainland, but they're in California and they're in other states. There's probably some other competitive type of devices.
Okay.
But you have to put this in your car. It costs basically $175 to install it. That includes the first month. You sign a 12-month lease.
Oh.
And if you put this thing in your car, no matter what you blew in the machine, if you blew a .09 or if you blew a 3.3, it doesn't really matter. If you put this thing in your car and you maintain it and keep it in there for 12 months, you can drive 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for the entire year.
How often do you...
You bring it in once a month to have it checked to make sure it's operating
Oh.
mechanically.
Okay.
It's got a little camera
Uh-huh.
to make sure that you're the person blowing into the machine. And secondly, also when you bring it in every month, it has a printout to show how many times you tried to blow in the machine when your alcohol level was higher than a .02.
It makes you think twice before drinking and getting in your car if you're going to blow in this
Well,
thing.
especially if you're some area where you know the car's not going to start.
Yeah. I
Right.
mean, well, it makes you think not to drink, first of all, because you're going to have to blow in this thing.
Well, or it talks about the designated driver.
Designated driver.
Designated driver. Have someone...
D squared.
Right.
Yeah.
So if you lose your license for a year, you can drive, but only a car that has the ignition interlock in it.
I see.
It has to be. In fact, you have 3 cars. You can put ignition interlock into 3 separate cars.
Oh,
if you
while
want.
we're on the subject, here's my question too, and maybe some people are thinking about it. Say this happened to you, but you're driving someone else's car. What do you say to that person who owns the car? That is, you got somebody who got caught for DUI, and now you're letting them drive your car.
So wait a minute. So if you had a DUI, let's say.
Right, and say, let me borrow your car, and let me drive your car.
Well, then I'm responsible if I let you drive the car. I'm letting a person I'm letting an unlicensed driver drive my car, so I could be charged. And if you got caught driving my car that does not have ignition interlock, that we go back to those penalties where you're going to go to jail for 3 days up to a year. You're going to lose your
Wow.
license for not 1 year but 2 years. You're going to have an SR22, which we talked about before, $5,000-$6,000 a year,
Skyrocket.
extra insurance, on top of your insurance for the car, and you won't be able to get an SR. You won't be able to get a ignition interlock in your car.
So in other words, don't let that person beg you to drive your car.
No.
Yeah,
no,
absolutely
no,
not.
No.
Better to be angry at that person than get possibly in deep trouble.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's good to know.
Yeah. If you've lost your privileges to drive, the only way you can drive during that course of a year is to install ignition interlock in your car.
Okay.
And it has to be in the car that you're driving. Because if you get pulled over and you're driving my car, they're going to say, where's your license? And you say, well, I have a permit to drive ignition interlock. And they'll go, look, yeah, but Mr. CUNNEY doesn't have ignition interlock in his car. Come on with me. You're under arrest.
Oh.
Yeah. Now, there's only one other limited exception to this.
The evil thing.
No. Well, that's a possibility, and I did use that on one of these cases. But, no, the other one is to get what they call a EDP, an employer driving permit. If you drive a company car, let's say you drive for Xerox, okay? And your job is you're allowed to take the Xerox car home at night. Might be like a van or an SUV, so you have carry supplies. If the president of the company locally here signs a piece of paper saying Joe Smith is allowed to drive, but he only can drive for 8 hours a day. Let's say 7 in the morning till 7 o'clock at night, and it has to be specific to the car that that Xerox owns. So you'd have the make of the car and the license plate. Everything would have to be Xerox. But a lot of people are afraid to go to the boss and let the boss know they got a DUI, so they don't ask for that. But you know where I've used that?
That's a risk.
I've used that successfully, though, for some of these kids that work, like, say, at the Nissan dealership or down at the BMW dealership, and they have to mechanic or they have to move cars around the lot. The car dealers have been pretty good about that. And they'll give them that 8 hour, that 8 hour permit, 12-hour permit, 8 in the morning to 8 o'clock at night, or 7 to 7, 6 to 6, whatever the hours are. And they're allowed to drive, but it has to be a car that's owned by the company. And probably it might be restricted to just driving like within a mile of the dealership.
Yeah. Well, that makes sense.
This concludes part 1 of a 2-part series with DUI attorney Paul CUNNEY. Stay tuned for another episode for part 2. Aloha and mahalo.
Thank you for listening to the Legal Advice in Paradise podcast. For more information, visit www.legaladviceinparadise.com. Welcome to the Legal Advice in Paradise podcast, brought to you by www.legaladviceinparadise.com. Even in one of the most beautiful places in the world, life can be litigious. On this podcast, the best and brightest legal minds gather to help you navigate your way through every legal question you may face. This program will help you know your rights, know what steps to take, and help you find the best legal representation, all in simple, easy to understand terms. And now, here's your host, Justine Gronwald.
Aloha everyone, and here's part 2 of the 2-part series with DUI attorney Paul CUNNEY. And before we start, I wanted to invite you, if you aren't already, join our free Agent of Change membership. And it's simple to join. Just text or call your name and your email to area code 808-670-3400, and make sure you text back agree to receive your messages. And when you do, you will automatically be sent tips on how to hire an attorney. Now let's dig into part 2 of our interview with DUI attorney Paul CUNNEY.
Well, let's move on to this one. We're going to go into the penalties. Okay. So, say someone got caught driving. They end up in this seat right here in front of your office. And when I visited you to be on the show, you gave me this penalties. And there's the first offense, the second offense, and the third offense. And the first offense is no conviction within the past 5 years. Then you would have to go through this 14-hour minimum rehab.
Right, yeah.
Substance abuse rehab program. And then the 1-year revocation and...
Right.
Yeah.
And you need to have to do an alcohol assessment. So if it's a first offense, and let's say you had a DUI 6 or 7 years ago, and you cleaned it all up, you did what you were supposed to do, you got relicensed, so you're legal now. Now you pick up another DUI. Okay. If 5 years have gone by from the first one,
that's what it says here, within 5 years.
Yeah. So if it's within 5 years, then it's a second offense.
Right.
Yeah.
But if it's after.
So in other words, let's say you got arrested in the year 2005, and here we are in 2014. Now there's a DUI out there, and they might look at it and they'll know about it. The courts will know about it, but you'll still be treated as a first-time offender because 5 years have gone by.
Right.
From 2005 that thing should have been off your record somewhere in 2010 or 11. So now you get one in 2014. This one now becomes a new first-time offense. But the problem is you got one from 05, now you got one from 14. You get one more, then you got 3 in 10 years.
3 strikes, you're out.
Yeah, and 3 convictions can get you what they call a habitual DUI. If you have 3 DUIs and then you pick up a 4th one, you're looking at what they call habitual DUI, which is a felony, punishable by 5 years in jail.
Wow.
And the judges are making people serve jail on that. So sometimes you'll serve 1 year, and the judge will suspend the rest of the sentence, put you on probation, keep your nose clean for 4 years. The case will go off your record, so to speak. So if you let's go back to the first offender, because most people are first offenders.
Right. That's
right.
Unfortunate, but that's good. Most of them are.
Right.
Not repeat.
Right, exactly. So the first offenders, they have to lose their license. If they're found guilty, they'll lose their license for 1 year. Number 2, they're going to have to go across the street over to American Savings Bank, the 5th floor. That's called the Division of Driver Education. And they will have a list of about 10 or 15 people who are what they call certified substance abuse assessors. Okay, not people in their office or on the outside. You have to pick a name, you have to call that person, you pay $55, $60, sometimes $65. The person will give you a receipt, and you go and you meet with that alcohol assessor, and they determine whether you have a drinking problem or not. It's mostly a self-reporting thing, but they will also know if you had one before too. So let's say you had a DUI 6 years ago, and then now you go. So it's a little closer in time. The one assessor that I use a lot for my clients, I know he'll put you in his Saturday morning class, and you'll have to go to 4 sessions there, and it costs you about $150 to go to it. Yeah. So
everything costs money, because I see all these different fees here.
Yeah, right. So let's just continue along this. So if you lose your license for 1 year, then you go for the alcohol assessment, and whatever the alcohol assessor says, you have to do. So if there's some alcohol assessor makes a determination, they think you've got more of a drinking problem, they could order you to do 30 AA meetings in 30 days.
Wow. Consecutive.
Mandatory. One a day. And if you don't do it, you don't get relicensed. Or they could say, maybe do 10 AA meetings in a period of 30 days. Or some will say, I want you to go into an outpatient program.
Wow.
I mean, if you got an alcohol level and your blow is like 2.8, 2.9.
And what's the minimum now?
Well, the minimum is 0.8.
Okay.
Yeah, you have to be 0.8 or above to be found guilty. There's another little area there between 0.5 and 0.8. If there's an accident, you can look. So if some person blows an 0.6 or an 0.7, they'll say, hey, I'm not under the influence, I'm below the legal limit. But when there's an accident involved, it's called the gray area between 0.5 and 0.8. And even though you might win at the administrative side because you didn't get to that 0.8, the prosecutors can use it against you on the criminal side, saying, Judge, this person was more impaired than just the alcohol, that just because they didn't blow a .08, look at the accident here, what happened, that. And other indicia, maybe slurred speech or stumbling or confused, things like that, Yeah. So you have to do the classes. The classes used to be 3 half days. Now it's 2 7-hour days. Those are, again, given on the 5th floor of the American Savings Bank building across the street.
7 hours,
7 hours. And you go there with a counselor. A counselor is one of the people that work at driver's education, and they'll show you some films. They'll have they'll lecture about what alcohol does on the human body and how the body metabolizes alcohol.
How it impairs all your
Exactly,
your
right, exactly,
yeah.
And it's educational, and
that's good.
I think a lot of people get a lot out of it,
That's good.
Yeah. So that's mandatory. Then there are mandatory costs, for the driver's education. Then you have to pay something for victim compensation fund. Then you
30?
have the neurotrauma.
25 for
right?
that.
Yeah, all these little small things.
Driver's ed.
Right.
$7.
Right.
And drug demand reduction assessment, $250.
Yeah, as far as the 250 drug demand assessment, the judge usually fines you $50 and suspends the other 200. But if you don't do the alcohol assessment and do the treatment, then the judge can come back and whack you for the other 200.
That's a lot of money.
It is. It is.
And then on top of that, one or more of the following
fines
$150 to $1,000 fine,
right,
on top of 72 hours of community service,
right,
48 hours to 5 days imprisonment.
right. So it's pretty stiff.
It's pretty stiff. Are you listening out there? Okay.
So what the judge does for first offenders, he normally doesn't give jail. I tell my clients that chances of you getting jail are very, very slim on a first offense. And you probably won't be picking up papers in Waikiki or, doing community service. What the judge does, they whack you in the fine. There's usually $500 posted on the case. The prosecutors will argue, well, Judge, the fine in this case is should be higher because the alcohol level. They kind of use the alcohol level as a barometer for what the fine should be. So if let's say your alcohol level is a 1.5, they'll tell the judge should $500, $600 plus all those other costs. So the cheapest you can get out of a DUI is about $362. So some of those people actually get a little bit of money back. Very rarely. Kind of the uniformly or arbitrarily, the judges kind of got together and raised the minimum fine to $250. So, but I argue to the judge when it gets to a first offender, and if that person has gone out and done what the legislature wanted them to do, and that is put that ignition interlock in your car so you can continue to drive for the entire year. I say, Judge, that person's laying out over $1,000 because it cost $85 to install, $89 a month to maintain.
Oh,
so,
and it's a minimum of a year.
Yeah, you have to sign a 12-month lease.
So it's $85 a month.
Right. So,
and then it's $175 just to install it.
But that includes first month too.
Oh, okay.
So if you add up everything, it comes very close to about $950. So I tell the judge, it's $1,000.
That's $1,000 just for that, not including all this other stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So that's why I say, Judge, the person's done. They haven't put the government through a trial. They've taken responsibility. They've spent this money that they didn't have to do to put this ignition interlock in their car. Give them a break, like that. And the judge does. Yeah. So in other words,
and hopefully it's a huge wake-up call.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Well, they should realize for that whole year, every time they start their car, it should remind them to the time that they started it and got a DUI, in a sense.
And now, for those who didn't listen, second offense.
Second offense. Yeah, that's.
Ooh, it's getting stiffer.
That's either like 240 hours of community service.
Wow.
Or jail. 5 days jail. And I tell a lot of people, hey, you're better off doing the 5 days jail. They go, why? I don't want to go to jail. I says 240 hours of community service. You are going to be doing, and you do it like increments of like 4 hours here, 5 hours.
That's a long
It's
time.
like basically giving up a Saturday or Sunday for an entire year. You know, so just go in and get it over with. They don't put the person in with general population. First of all, you're not going to Halava prison up in the valley.
Where do you go?
You're going to go to OCCC.
Ooh.
Down on Dillingham. Okay? So, and they put you in what they call the annex, okay, which is separate from the main building.
Okay.
There's a couple wooden sheds that are actually, they look wooden, but they're concrete inside. And, you go in there on a Thursday afternoon and get out on a Monday. So you do Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. You do 5 days, you know. Sometimes sometimes you get lucky. They're so overcrowded out there that maybe after 3 days they might cut you loose. But 5 days there, it's done with, you know. And a lot of people have gone in there and they said, yeah, you were right. I didn't want to lose a Saturday. You know, I usually have to be with my kids, or I coach soccer, or I coach baseball, you know, so.
But hopefully that's another wake-up call.
Yeah, that's a second offender now.
Yeah.
And what Judge David Lowe, who's the kind of the DUI judge here in Honolulu, he started up. You know, we've always had a drug court, and we've had a veterans court, we've had a mentally ill court.
Mm-hmm.
Now we have a DUI court, and I actually have 3 clients that are in there right now. Those are individuals that have second and third DUIs.
Habitual.
Well, no, habitual becomes the fourth DUI.
Oh.
4 and 10 years is habitual.
Mm-hmm.
But it's someone who gets 2 convictions, picks up a third, or gets the second one, and kind of out of control, that needs some help.
Right.
And they've graduated a couple people already, and you basically meet every, I think it's about once a month. Sometimes it's twice a month, but it's every Thursday. You show up at 9 o'clock. There'll be probably 15 or 20 people in the class, and the judge calls you up and questions you, how you doing? Is your life any better? When was the last time you drank? And they'll test them, randomly to see if they're still drinking.
Oh, that's what it's about. I'm going to be interviewing Duke Iona. He was with the drug court, so it's kind of similar. Like they create these things for people to go to as part of their rehabilitation.
Right.
Oh, okay, that's
Right.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he had the drug court. Now the drug court's run by Steve Alm. Steve Alm, I was over there watching him the other day, and I've known Steve probably 25, 30 years ever since I've been in town. He was a prosecutor, and then he went over to the U.S. Attorney's office, and then he became the U.S. Attorney. And then he came back out and got a judgeship, and he's taken over the drug court, and he's doing a wonderful job.
That's good
I
to
mean,
hear.
he's really found his niche. I really give him a lot of credit.
That's great.
Yeah, because I think if you're going to be a judge, I always thought if I was a judge, I'd want to be dealing with juveniles, try to help turn their lives around and stuff like that.
Early on.
Huh?
Early on.
Yeah,
Early
exactly.
young.
And that's what Steve's doing over there now.
That's
with these and I had a client that had 8 months, clean and sober, 8 months. And he got a job. He's doing well, and then all of a sudden he runs into one of his buddies on the street, and he takes a hit of the pipe.
Yeah, it's that association again.
Right. Yeah. Well, they tell you in AA or NA, people, places, and things. You've got to change. The people you're hanging around, the places where you're going, things you were doing. You change those when you want to make changes in your life.
Yeah.
And Judge Lowe's doing that with the DUI
That's
court.
good.
Very similar to what they did with in fact, the Judge Marsha Waldorf, she's retired now, but she's the one who had the mental health court. And then Iona had the drug court.
Right.
But that's Stephen Alm's running that right now.
Yeah.
And it's really
Maybe I should
very
have him.
successful.
Maybe we should have him here
Yes.
and talk to him. But for the second offense, so then now they're doing the alcohol, the DUI court. Is that what it's called?
Not necessarily. You don't.
Oh.
That's all voluntarily. You don't have to go into
okay,
that. No,
okay.
it's optional to go in there.
Okay.
But I identified 2 of my clients, people that I knew there. I knew the mom on one case. I knew the other one's brother, and I could see that they needed this. I just thought, I recommended it to them, and just thought it would change their lives, and it really has. So
That's good.
Yeah. So it's not for everybody, but it's for someone who really wants to make some changes. And plus there were a couple of charges out there that were, if we went into the program and if they successfully completed, maybe some of those underlying charges, which are serious, might get dismissed for it's kind of a dangling a carrot, You want this one to go into that DUI court and put your heart and soul into it.
That's good.
Yeah. Yeah, they'll make a change in their lives.
That's good.
And I've already seen.
I'm glad you brought that up.
I've seen that with the third fellow. I don't know that well because one of my associates is handling his. But the 2 that I'm familiar with, I've seen. Well, physically, they look 5 years younger to begin with.
Wow.
And one of the guys, was working, doing banquets and bartending, and he got out of it. He says, I can't be around that. And so now he's selling surfboards. And he told the judge the other day, he says, that's always been my lifetime passion.
Wow.
So he says, I'm doing what I want to do. And I compliment them. They lost weight, they look younger, they just have a better attitude, they don't come in grouchy, grumbling, and stuff like that. So
wow, that's
good changes.
I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah.
So and then as far as community service now, we talked about
the
that.
community service, that's the one
240
240 hours. Yeah, that's why that takes a long time to do it, and they try to have you do it in 6 months, but judges realize you need a whole year to do it.
Yeah, especially if it's only 4 minutes,
and then, you know,
for hours.
And then, you know, they got families. That's why, again, I stress. I said, go in and do the 5 days. Get it over with. You want to be hanging this thing out for a whole year, because then something will crop up. Then they have to go in and get re-referred to the judge to have it time extended. So then maybe it might be a year and a half before they complete that. You know, so.
And so now let's get into the third offense.
Yeah, well, the third offense, you got mandatory jail.
Mandatory,
yeah. Mandatory 10
5
days jail.
years 10. Or 2 prior convictions. This is what we're talking about as far as the third offense.
Third offense, yep.
And you got 2-year revocation of license.
Right.
2 whole years.
Right.
And the fees are all the same.
No, the fees go up. I think the fees go up to $1,500.
Okay. I have here $500 to $2,500 in fines. This part here.
Yeah. No, for the third offense, you lose your license for 2 years. So the first offense is 1 year. Second offense is 18 months. Third offense, it's 2 years. So just
That's a long time.
Yeah, it is. It's a long time. And you're going to do a minimum of 10 days to 30 days jail. Right.
Yeah.
And then, see, once you get the third conviction, then you open yourself up to the felony DUI, the habitual DUI. If you have 3 convictions in a 10-year period. Yeah. And be surprised. There's guys out there that get them.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's other people out there that had them 15 to 20 years ago. The legislature was nice enough to say that if they put the ignition interlock in their car now and they drive on it for 2 years and there's no problems, they'll let them apply for a license. So some of those old timers out there that might have got a habitual DUI back, you know, in the early 90s, you know, when they revoked them for life. It was a life revocation.
Wow.
When that case went up to the Hawaii Supreme Court, and they came back and said life is life.
Yeah.
So now the legislature is saying, well, life is, for someone who's like 30 years old, life is kind of tough if they're going to live another 50 years.
Right.
So they've said, you know, if you can demonstrate that you haven't driven and you've abided by the law, and if you put the ignition interlock in your car for 2 years and you don't have any problems with it, then you can go and apply for a license again. Okay. So they've softened that up, you know, for people who got them, you know, 20, 30 years ago.
So now we know what the penalties are. So now someone's sitting in your chair, what would you like them to bring with them when they first sit with you?
Well, when they come in, they bring in their temporary permit to drive. Okay.
Because that'll be issued to them right away.
That should be given to them by the police officer the night he bails out. When he bails out, he'll get that. Or if he stays overnight and can't make bail, he'll get it from the sheriffs when he's bailed, when he released in the morning.
Well, let me ask you this. As far as bail, what is that typically set at?
Bail, first offense is $500.
So somebody's got to come with $500 cash to get you out.
Right.
Wow.
Now, some police officers are pretty cool that if you do have your wallet, and it's like in Kailua, there's an ATM right across the street at the 7-Eleven. They'll walk you over there. They won't let you walk over on your own. They'll escort you across the street.
And you just take that right out.
You get the $500 out, right? And then you put the $500 and you bail out, okay? Now, but some people, you know, they don't take a breath test at the station. They refuse. They just said, I don't like the way I was arrested, the way I was stopped.
Now, do you advise that to refuse?
It really depends. I think for people who cannot afford a criminal conviction. Now, some people, if they're like a airline pilot, if they're a nurse, if they're a doctor, people who have to report. Lawyers have to report DUIs on their registration form for renewal. People who might have high security clearance in the military. Those type of people, I think, really need to think about taking it. But every case is different.
Right.
You know, some people come in here and they'll tell you, I only had 2 beers, but I was told the machine didn't work. And I'm going, well, wait a minute now. If you really only had 2 beers, you should have blown in the machine. You wouldn't even be talking to me.
Right,
Because if it's below '08, they just give you your license back and out the door you go. You know, so a lot of people, that's the familiar battle cry or the song
you
they
hear
sing
that, people?
is, oh yeah, 2 beers. I had 2 beers. Only two. You know, like that. Or some people say, I only had 2 glasses of wine, and then the question is, well, how big were the glasses?
How big were the glasses?
Yeah,
Right.
So, it all depends. I think if you refuse, you're setting yourself up, though, on the administrative side to lose your license for 2 years.
Wow.
Not with the judge, but with the revocation office. It doubles, okay? Now, if you go down there with a client, it's his first offense, you can argue to the hearings officer, no, my client's never been in this situation before. They were nervous. The language that the officer reads there's a lot of legalese in there, you know, and it's hard to understand. And a lot of people are upset at themselves.
Right.
They're thinking, oh my God, I'm just going to lose my job. What's my wife going to say?
That's the first thing that goes through their minds.
Yeah, exactly. Everything flashes. So a lot of people probably don't think, and yet the problem is you don't have an opportunity to consult with an attorney when you're at the police station. That stage of the proceedings, you cannot talk to an attorney. So some people think, well, if I don't blow in the machine, they can't find me guilty. Well, that's probably true. But they can take your license for double down at the revocation office. But most of the hearings officer knows that there's probably some extenuating circumstances, and they'll usually give you the benefit of the doubt and maybe reduce it from 2 years down to 1 year. But that means 1 year, you can lose your license for a year down there, or you can lose it for a year with the judge. It's like a double whammy. I said they're coming at you 2 ways.
Yeah.
So it's difficult to win both the revocation side, the civil side, and the criminal side with the courthouse. You know, I mean, I can't talk about statistics, but you know, we do very well. Okay, get a lot of licenses back at the revocation office. Be honest with you, but. Just because you get your license back at the revocation office doesn't mean you're going to win at the criminal side, because they're still going to be waiting for you.
There's
over
that
there.
2-prong.
Yeah, well, a police officer can't be in both places.
Yeah.
So sometimes if he's subpoenaed to go to the court and he gets subpoenaed to come to the hearing, he's kind of has to go to court because it has a little higher priority. So you might get the benefit of that because he can't be in 2 places at once.
Okay.
But I think the cardinal rule is to take the test.
Yeah.
It really is.
You hear that, people?
Take the test.
Yeah.
Because, you know, first of all, if you do take the test, you can bail out right away. You know, what some people play around down there, they'll say, well, I think I want a blood test, and, you know, the officer will drive them all the way to town, and they'll say, oh, the needle looks so big. I don't want a needle.
Oh, my.
Take me back to CUNNEY. I'll blow in the machine. You know, well, they'll take them back, but maybe they'll say, hey, you're playing games.
Right.
You know, you're not going to take a test now. So, yeah, it all depends. Some people act up. Some guys want to go after the officers. Hey, take that badge off. Put that gun down. You and me outside.
Oh, no, not a good idea.
No. Some people, and those are the ones that are really under the influence because they're not thinking straight. They become argumentative, belligerent, you know, and the police officers don't deserve that, and they don't like it.
Yeah.
Okay, like that. So, and then there's other ones that do get feisty, and you know, especially if not only alcohol, if they've got like ice in them, if they got drugs. Police officer will tell me it takes 3 officers to take a guy down, physically get him down on the ground and handcuff him if they're on ice.
Right.
Yeah, so that's bad too. So
Yeah, that's bad.
So the police they take a lot of abuse. But then again, a lot of people are respectful and they realize, hey, I made a mistake, you know.
That's good.
You know, and I'll take my punishment and take my responsibility and turn a negative into a positive.
That's good. Yeah. So they sit here. They give you their temporary.
They give me. I tell them to bring in their temporary permit and also bring in their bail slip.
Bail slip.
Because when they come in with a bail slip, I'll know what their court date is.
Okay.
It's very important to make sure that someone shows up and preserves their bail. Because if let's say you got arrested today is what, the 27th of May, your court date is usually a month later, so let's say June 27th. And the guy just forgets to go, okay? And, well, he's gonna lose his $500 bail, and the judge is going to then issue a bench warrant for him to be arrested, and then the new bail will be like $1,000 or $1,500.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's important to make an appearance. So if a client comes in here, I says, bring your temporary permit to drive. Number 2, I want to make sure that you are legal to drive. Now, some people can't find their licenses when they get arrested. They get flustered, okay? And or they can't find their insurance card. So some people will come in here and they'll say, well, you know, I had a license, but the officer checked off, this is not a temporary permit. No license was surrendered. So those people, I'll tell them to give me their license. I will take it down to the revocation office and have the temporary permit issued, reflecting that they do in fact have licenses. Because there's some question, if they get caught driving a week after they're arrested and the temporary permit says you don't have a license, the person will say, well, I really do have a license. Well, you should have given it to the officer that night. So you want to correct it right away. If you want to make sure that if a person didn't get a temporary permit because the license was in another pocketbook or it was in the glove box and she forgot to give it to him, then turn it in, bring it in to me, and I will make her legal on the road right from the beginning.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's 2 items that they bring to you. Is there anything else?
They should bring their insurance card.
Insurance?
Right, because a lot of times that's another one. The officers will say, I never saw an insurance card. And usually when the officer approaches, he says, I want driver's license, insurance card, and registration. Now, a person, again, gets so flustered, or they could be driving their husband's car, or they could be driving their brother's car. So maybe they'll have their license, but they won't have their insurance and registration. So the officer will give them a citation. And if you don't have insurance and you come to court, it's a $500 fine and a 90-day loss of license. So bring in the insurance card. I've got it in the file. So if I walk in at the person's original arraignment for charge, and I'll see, oh, they're charging her DUI, but they're also charging her with no-fault insurance, I'll show it to the prosecutor and get it dismissed. You want to get that off the calendar, because I don't like the judge to see that. Every time we come to court, the judge will see a DUI, and then they'll say, oh, no insurance. If you have insurance, get rid of it. And so in the judge's mind, he's not thinking that you're a bad person. He probably already thinks that, wow, got a DUI at a young age, or, you know, and you don't have insurance either. So, you know, get rid of some of that peripheral stuff and clean it up a little bit right from the beginning.
Now, do you provide from your website forms to pre-fill, or you just want them to bring those 3 items? Are there other things they should be prepared with?
Yeah, on my website, you know, I have them maybe fill out a statement, but, you know, a lot of people, they call up and they want to talk about the case over the phone.
Do you do that?
Not really. I mean, I will talk to them and encourage them to give me some facts. I mean, they'll start talking. I says, please, let me just ask you a series of 10 questions, and right from that I'll know it. Like, okay, what time of night you get arrested? Was there?
Okay, let's go over that really quick.
Well, okay, I'll say to him, like, well, okay, is this your first offense? Yes. Where did you get arrested? Kailua. Was there an accident? No. Okay. Was anybody else with you? Any witnesses? Yes. Did you have a driver's license that night? Yes. Did you give it to the officer? Yes. Did you get a temporary permit? I don't know what that is. Well, did you get 4 pages that are stapled together, and the top it says Notice of Administrative Revocation? They'll look and say, oh yeah, I got it right here. I says, okay. I don't know. I don't know whether I can drive or not. I said, well, go about 2/3 the way down the page, and on the left-hand side, there's 2 little small boxes. One will be checked. This is a temporary permit. And right below it says, your license has been sent to ADLRO, Administrative Driver's License Revocation Office. On the right-hand side of that page, about the same level, there's another little box that says, this is not a temporary permit because no license was surrendered, or license was expired, or license was revoked, that type of thing. So I said, that's important to look at. Make sure you look at that to see if you've got a license.
Okay.
Because then some people, like I say, well, it's checked off, I don't have a permit. And I says, well, you didn't give the license to the judge? Well, to the police officer? Well, I couldn't find it right away. Okay, I said, well, then technically you shouldn't drive. You should get in here, have someone bring you here, bring your plastic license, I'll turn it in. So questions like that. I just,
Okay.
you know, things like, do you have insurance? But some of those responses are, well, no, this is not my first offense. Okay, my next question would be, well, how long ago was the first one? Well, I don't know, about 3 or 4 years ago. Could it be more than 5? And I said, what's your bail? $1,000. Okay, well, that means that they saw in the computer another DUI. They don't specify, because if you had a DUI 15 years ago, it will still show a DUI in there in your computer. So that's why your bail will be jacked from 500 to 1,000.
Wow.
So just the preliminary questions. I just really want to know, and they'll say, well, what do you charge? I said, you know what? I says, be honest with you, I don't know what I have to do for you.
That's a good question. I was going to ask you that,
Yeah.
but you just answered
Yeah,
that.
well,
So it's each
Every
individual
case is different.
It's different.
You know, exactly. I mean, you know, some cases where, you know, a person is sideswiped a car,
Ooh.
you know, a parked car on the alleyway, and they admit to me that they blew like a 2-2 in the breath machine. I'll say, you know, this is not winning this case. I mean, Harry Houdini couldn't get you out of this trouble, you know.
That's a good line.
Johnny Cochran's not around anymore, you know, like that. I says, this is damage control. I says, you know, I said, first of all, I says, you know, you got to, you know, come to grips with the fact that, you know, your alcohol level is sky high. And I said, you know, now you might have an SR22 because normally you wouldn't have it, but if there's damage over $3,000, it could kick in an SR22. And I said, you know, I said, you better come in and we better talk about this. Well, what are you going to charge? I says, let me tell you this. I said, I've been doing it for 40 years. I'm not going to get rich off of you, okay? I don't want your good money if I can't do anything for you. I said, but I would probably advise you, let's go in, hat in hand, humble pie, and tell the judge, geez, I made a mistake, judge. And, you know, why put the government through a trial on something like this? I think you're better off going in and taking responsibility.
That's a good point.
Put that ignition interlock in your car, okay, and get in and get your classes going. Because I think if you come in like that, even with a high reading and an accident, I think I can convince the judge to, you know, give you the lowest fine possible because you're putting that ignition interlock. And that's what it's all about. The legislature wanted that for public safety. So as long as you're doing what the legislature asks you to do, I think that's you'll be rewarded for it. So as far as just giving a price, I says, listen, I'm in the ballpark. I said if you want the cheapest lawyer, keep asking. You can call around, but it says, do you really want the cheapest lawyer? Maybe he's no good. I said, I think you ought to. I think word of mouth is important. You know. And I said, you might be getting something in the mail from my office. I said, I've been doing this 40 years. I said, knock on wood, I've never been disciplined by the ODC, Office of Disciplinary Counsel, which is and I've represented over 10,000 people. I don't think anybody. My practice is as big
How
as
many people?
Over 10,000.
Wow.
Over the years, I really have. And I don't stop and think about it, but you know, just on sheer numbers every week, people coming in. But I said, I'm going to treat you fairly, okay? And but you know, you're going to get a brochure from me, and you're going to see that I've been working hard for a long time. I got 2 lawyers. They're both former prosecutors. Dean went to Mililani High School, UH Law School.
Local boy.
Yeah, and the other boy went to Punahou and went to Berkeley, and they're both excellent lawyers. Okay, they're both fighters. But there's times to fight, and there's times to, you know...
humble pie.
Yeah, roll over and say, I made a mistake. Take responsibility. And that's why, like I said earlier, when I go in try a case, I like the judge to think, well, Paul's in here trying this case because he thinks he's got a meritorious claim. I'm not in there to waste the prosecutor's time, the judge's time, my client's time, or my time. I mean, if it's a bad case, I'm going to try to make a deal. Okay? So that's what it comes down to. So... I've always prided myself on being fair to the clients, and whatever it takes. Some cases require more work because they're winnable. Hey, if a guy comes in here and he's blown like a .084 with a margin of error, he's below the legal limit. Those are the cases where I tell them, hey, if I dot my I's and cross my T's, I'm going to win this case. I can win this case, you know. So every case is different, and I just don't think. And I said, I think number 2. I says, you should want to meet the lawyer that's going to represent you.
Exactly.
You shouldn't just do a phone survey and see what people are charging.
Yeah, that's the theme of. So far, I've interviewed a handful of attorneys now, and the recommendation is yes, call around, but mostly you need to see if the relationship is good.
Right.
If you are going to clash, then you might as well, not do it.
No.
Yeah.
I've had some of those.
Yeah.
I mean, there's sometimes I've said, "Oh, I kind of knew that client was going to be."
See, you
different.
got to listen to your gut.
Yeah, you really do. Yeah.
Yeah,
So I've
yeah.
made mistakes in taking clients, and and I would hope that most of the clients are happy with my representation.
Well, being around for 40 years, and you know what? I thank you so much, Paul,
Yeah.
because I don't think, a lot of people are well-intentioned people, but we're fallen and we make mistakes. So this is a good way to let people know what the consequences are, because you've made it very clear. I mean, we've just been really thorough. And however, if they find themselves in that situation, then this is what they got to go through.
Right.
This is what's ahead of them. And you've been so detailed. I really appreciate that.
The DUI is expensive once you get one, though. There's some different little layers of fines and
That's what I've been
ignition interlock,
discovering,
attorney's
yeah.
fees.
SR22.
Yeah, but at the same time, I don't want to drag my client to court 4 or 5 times when I know in the end the state's probably going to get all their witnesses together, and if they do, they've got a case, and I'm going to just have to cave in. Maybe better off going in and just taking the responsibility from the beginning. It's like that ad on TV with the guys going, "Oh yeah, I lost my girlfriend because I got a DUI, and now I don't have a car because the insurance is so high." It goes on and on and on. But it's the truth.
It's real.
Yeah, DUI, and that's why it's very important to get. If it's not me, there are some other attorneys in town that are qualified to handle these cases, and go meet with the lawyer, feel comfortable with the lawyer,
Right.
okay? Because I want to feel comfortable with them. I want them to see my operation, the lawyers that work for me, my secretaries, and what my procedures are, So it's and how I handle cases. Yeah.
Well, I thank you so much, Paul. And we're going to cut this in 2 because we've had I didn't want to cut you off. So what I'm going to do is make this 2 episodes.
Okay.
So you're gonna be like a recurring automatic.
I don't have to change tie?
No.
Okay.
But thank you so much,
You're
Paul.
very welcome.
I mean, I love that you are open, and so far a lot of the attorneys have been. I think a lot of the general public just don't know what it's like to be an attorney, and yet, attorneys get a bad rap. But when you really look at it, it encompasses all of our, parts of our lives that we will need one.
There's a lot of attorney jokes, but I tell you,
I know.
When they get arrested, it's like, can you
yeah.
help me?
Well, I interviewed Jim Hochberg, and he sat with Sam Slum, and they were talking, on an issue, and even Sam said, I don't like attorneys, but you know what? When I need one, he's got to get one, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's the whole idea. Yeah. But anyway, thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Very welcome. Very welcome.
And we'll be so grateful that you can come back on other issues.
Yeah.
Because you cover more than just DUI.
Yeah, I was thinking the other day, I got called in a lot to comment on the Didi trial.
Oh,
when that
okay.
was coming up,
Yeah, and there's a lot of commentary on that.
When a lot of one of the stations in town had me come on about 10 minutes to 7 in the morning for about 3 weeks, and it's an interesting case. So, I'll be glad to go on if you have some other topics you want to talk about.
All right, so let's say goodbye to everybody
Okay.
in the video world,
Yeah.
and then aloha.
Remember, it's one or the other. Either you drink or drive. You can't do both.
Yes, listen to him.
Okay.
All right.
But if you do get caught, you call.
Okay. Aloha.
All right.
Thank you for listening to the Legal Advice in Paradise podcast. For more information, visit www.legaladviceinparadise.com.